Hi there. This is Laura with the ITONICS Academy. Did you know that only 6% of CEOs are satisfied with the innovation performance of their organization? Often, innovation teams are internally referred to as the crazy guys, and they need to fight for acceptance within their organization. To bring more structure to innovation management within organizations, the focus of this course is about effectively and efficiently organizing teams that deal with managing change, innovation, and development. Managing teams is one of the core subjects in every management class. So, why do we need a dedicated course for innovation teams? Well, experience is a great teacher. And from our own experience and learnings from our clients, we've learned that innovation governance is the key lever to significantly enhancing innovation performance. In this course, we focus on the purpose and building blocks of innovation governance, how to design a working structure and translate it into smooth operations, and enabling you to optimally organize your teams to drive your organization's future success. The guidelines in this course are grounded in our experience working with innovation leaders and startups, and is further enriched by our strong academic background and our own attempts in organizing innovation. It is designed to be hands-on and to deliver concrete and practical inspiration. And so, we've outlined 4 milestones that we'll cover as the basis for innovation governance. We've started with the first milestone by discussing the fundamentals of innovation governance and allowing you to reflect and benchmark the governance framework against your current situation. In the second milestone, we'll discuss the building blocks in detail and give you inspiration on which paths to follow for each building block. The third milestone will help you to translate the structure into processes and begin your innovation operation. Finally, in the fourth milestone, you will reflect on your current situation and combine the various aspects into a concrete action plan. Remember that you define the tempo. This course is available 24/7, so the speed of your progress is in your hands. You can be sure that there is a host of support material to reference as you progress, including training videos, reference case examples and blog articles, downloadable templates and tasks for you. Are you ready? Let's get you up to speed and help you gain value for your organization, and of course, for you personally. See you in the next session. Welcome back. It's Laura with the ITONICS Academy. Okay, let's get to work and start with an important question. Why should you care about innovation governance? What's the big deal anyway? Well, the multiple directions that innovation activities can take underscore the importance of innovation governance. Innovating consists of numerous tasks, and innovating on a global corporate scale comes with even more tasks, which means that there is a lot of work that needs to get done. And, of course, the more work that needs to be done, the more people you need to get it done properly. This is a good time to remember that innovation is a collective effort, and that building a community of people within your organization is critical to its development. With more and more people accountable for innovation in organizations, there is an increased risk that different people work on the same tasks. And similarly, there is increased risk that solutions to problems have already been discussed or found, but not everyone knows about them. And further, with more people involved, more individual perspectives arise that may not be always aligned. All these aspects are called autonomy costs. These are the costs resulting from a lack of structure and coordination, and typically arise when individuals follow their own agenda, priorities, and approaches. Hey there, and welcome back. During the last session, we discussed the importance and relevance of innovation governance. In this session, we will zoom into the structural and operational aspects of innovation governance. This means that we will explore the framework and build the foundation for the next sessions. You will discover the 8 building blocks of innovation governance and how each building block impacts your innovation governance. These building blocks are the essential components that need to be designed and aligned well. With good design and alignment, it is possible to achieve the impact of governance that we explored in the previous session. As a reminder, as shown in the graphic, the building blocks of innovation governance have a structural and operational impact on your organization, which we'll unpack in more detail in this session. So, the first key aspect to be aware of is that innovation governance consists of structural and operational building blocks. The structural building blocks define the general conditions. This includes defining which parts you need to design, defining the rules of the game, and defining what you want to achieve together with what responsibilities and accountabilities arise from your objectives, and which follow-up formats you use to track the progress. These general conditions need to be defined per role that you need to establish. The operational building blocks are the glue that bind the structural building blocks together. They represent the actual behavior of your team. This means that you need to design appropriate means for incorporating your colleagues to the structure you envision. This will require a clear communication plan outlining the rules of the game and making accommodation for frequent feedback from your colleagues. Now, let's take a closer look at the Innovation Governance Framework and its building blocks in general. We'll first start with the 4 structural components. They include objectives, responsibilities, accountability, and follow-up. These components shouldn't be a surprise given the aspects discussed in the previous session. Ultimately, the more work you want to get done or the more people you engage, the more critical it becomes to have the right design and split of work among your colleagues to reduce autonomy costs and increase the probability of effective impact. The objectives define your team's overall aspiration. What does your team stand for? How should others perceive your team? Once you've clearly established your team objective, you can design the structure of your team and split the jobs to get done and respective key results per role and member of your team. Lastly, you need to define the follow-up formats of how everyone in your team is kept in the loop while also supporting each other. In a nutshell, governance structure communication deals with clear value communication, role charters, and OKR, your objectives and key results. Role modeling helps you practice what you expect from your colleagues. This means setting the right example and helping your colleagues meet your expectations. Information and communication coordination should help align your team internally. This could mean providing a common home for everything related to innovation that is easy to access and fosters transparency of what gets done. And as much as you need clarity internally, it is also important to communicate to your stakeholders regarding the results your team achieves and how your stakeholders and the organization overall benefit. Now that we have laid our foundation, we'll work on the different building blocks during the next sessions. But as a first task, you can think about how your innovation governance compares to these 8 building blocks. Have you already found the right structure and operations aligned to it? To support you further, either in building or adjusting your governance framework, you will learn some typical examples for each building block during the next sessions. See you there. Hey there, welcome back. How successful was your exercise with the Innovation Governance Framework? Were you able to fill all the building blocks with content? Well done if you did. And if you didn't, don't despair as we'll go through each building block in detail. We'll begin with the fundamentals, which are the structural components, where objectives is the first structural component. Objectives are the most fundamental building block because they clearly outline why your team exists and what value the team provides to your organization. In essence, it's about considering the following question. What would your organization lose if your team no longer existed? Depending on the anchoring in your organization's hierarchy, this can, of course, take very different directions, but in a nutshell, we've identified 4 areas where your team is able to differentiate themselves. It can be in the foresight area and finding answers to where to play. It can be in the ideation area and finding answers to how to win. It can be in the execution area and finding answers to questions on progress and whether the right projects are being executed, or it can be in the asset area and finding answers to the question when or where to renew. Depending on this hierarchical anchoring, you can be responsible for all areas if your organization has centralized its innovation activities, or if it is more decentralized. It could be that you are only responsible for a specific part of your organization's overall innovation management. So now it's up to you to make the first decision. Which area or areas is your team responsible for? Hey there, welcome back. Okay, if you found your team's position on the innovation curve, let's dive deeper and look into the common objectives for each area. If you work in the area of foresight, your team becomes invincible when you communicate about strategic investment decisions. With the help of your team, you're more likely to place bets on the right opportunities and overcome the biggest threats. Furthermore, your team becomes invincible when you support other corporate departments in transitioning to the future. This includes educating other teams on emerging trends, technologies, and requirements. In addition, it can also include the exploration of topics that departments are busy with and for which they need to understand the impact external forces can have on their future developments and adjust their planning accordingly. If you work in the area of ideation, your team becomes invincible when you explore the most promising solution options and create the necessary conditions for them to flourish. This could include generating new solutions internally, such as internal idea campaigns. Or, on the other hand, it could include the sourcing and evaluation of solutions that are accessible in the market, such as exploring startups and other cooperation partners. This second area, ideation, is informed by the opportunities identified in the first area, foresight. Why is this best? Because this way, it is guaranteed that your resources are used efficiently and are tied to your organization's strategic objectives. Needless to say, the project and progress management should also be in line with your organization's strategic objectives. If you work in this area, your team becomes invincible when you maximize the value of the overall project portfolio. This means that your team identifies and creates synergies, but also detects duplicates in the projects you run. It also becomes invincible when you create the necessary conditions to maximize the likelihood of meeting cost, scope, and time requirements. As a most valuable factor, your team removes roadblocks and supports the project teams in focusing on what matters most. Last but not least, your team can be responsible for the health of your asset portfolio. Your team becomes invincible when you maximize the overall asset portfolio. This is similar to the project portfolio, except that the focus is on already implemented solutions. You can maximize the value when you make the existing asset landscape known and ready to be used by everyone in your organization. This is classic knowledge management. But most often, this is the easiest way to find new direction and opportunities. Therefore, this can also make your team invincible because you have the position to explore future asset gaps. So, that wraps up identifying your team's specific objective. It was a lot, I know, but it just shows the very different directions that innovation management can take. So again, it's time to ask yourself some key questions. How do you deliver value to your organization? How do you make sure that no one will ever question the impact that your team delivers? Start right now, write down your team's purpose, and then let's move on to the next session where we'll focus on how to translate this overall objective into the jobs that need to get done and the respective roles that you can assign to your team members. Hey there, welcome back. To set the scene for this session right from the start, we won't be getting into the detail of any job that might be needed to reach the objectives discussed previously. This session will broadly explore and help you understand how to best translate your objectives into corresponding responsibilities so that in essence, you know how best to split your team's workload into jobs that do not overlap too much but complement each other. To do so, we start by taking a very abstract look into how jobs are getting done. The process consists of 3 phases: input generation, processing, and outcome. So how does this structure help us now? It helps us because we can break down our general objective into smaller outcomes and determine which activities your team needs to focus on. And that is why you should start with the right side of the formula. That is why you should break down your core objective into the smaller outcomes that help you to reach the overall objective. Since this is a bit abstract, let's look into one example to clarify your understanding. This example relates to the very first objective in foresight. Okay, imagine that your objective is spotting opportunities to inform strategic investment decisions and planning. What are the jobs and outcomes you need to advise on strategic investment decisions? As a final outcome, you need to craft a presentation of your team's results. Depending on your leadership's expectations, this can be a slideshow, on paper, or comparable formats. Ideally, you'd want to present a number of alternatives for consideration to optimize the decision-making process. Therefore, you will review your portfolio of opportunities and select the most promising ones that will likely catch the attention of your leadership. To get to this point, the opportunities need to be thoroughly analyzed. And, for a thorough analysis, it is recommended that your opportunities are assessed against criteria that are of interest. Commonly, affordability is a measure against which opportunities are assessed. It entails understanding how easy it is to turn the opportunity into concrete impact. It also considers the importance of the savings or earning potential of an opportunity as well as the urgency. Are your competitors already working on it? Will you lose your position if you do not address it? These are the most critical elements that should be included in your assessment. But to be able to do an adequate assessment, you will need a thorough description of the opportunity. What is it? Why does the opportunity exist? And why is it an opportunity for your business? This obviously requires that an opportunity has been identified. Furthermore, the identification of an opportunity is not just simply spotting new trends, technologies, challenges, or risks. It has to be put into the context of your organization. How does addressing an emerging development help your organization? That is what differentiates an opportunity from emerging developments. And to not get overwhelmed by the many different directions that your scouting can take, try to organize it into themes that matter to your business. So, here we are. We have split the overall objective into task packages. These packages allow us to distribute them among different roles. So in this way, you can be sure to really reach your core objective. The only question left is how you distribute these tasks among your team members. Do you have specialist roles and assign only one role to a person, or should he or she manage all tasks? At the end of the day, this decision depends on your available resources and the priority given to your foresight activities in your organization. Of course, the more resources you can utilize, the more specialized capabilities you can build, which, in turn, should positively impact the quality you deliver. But, as a takeaway and task for you, do the same exercise we have done here for your team. Use your objectives identified and split them into task and responsibility packages for your team. In the next session, we will explore the question how we can keep our team members accountable for the outcomes needed. Hi, welcome back. You're now in a good position to educate your team on what is required from everyone. But this is just the starting point. It's still too abstract to really make sure that your goals are achieved. You will need to be much more precise to turn responsibility into accountability. And so you will need to enrich the responsibility with some concrete numbers. This is where the concept of objectives and key results, also known as OKR, come into play. We can only judge whether we are progressing in the right direction when we formulate metrics and set expectation thresholds. And, as you may know, it's always better to have 2 or 3 very insightful metrics than dozens of them. You want to provide direction with these metrics, and this is why they should be purposefully designed and speak to the desired outcomes. To give you a practical example, let's go back to the foresight example from the previous session. Your expectations should be defined as a concrete result that is quantified. With that in mind, it may be a realistic expectation to have at least one opportunity budgeted per quarter. You will then be able to track back what that means in numbers for your other prior outcomes. To have one opportunity budgeted in a quarter, you may need to present at least 5 to 10 strong and convincing opportunities. This will require a portfolio of opportunities from which you can select. Therefore, 20 to 30 opportunities in your portfolio that have been reviewed and are ready for presentation will put you in a good position. Now, think back to what it takes to have this amount of opportunities ready per quarter. Remember that you will also need to have reviewed and described these opportunities as well as organize them as daily and weekly activities to ensure that your deadlines are met. The resulting numbers should give you and your team a clear idea of what matters most at the end. The beauty of this approach is that you can always fine-tune your results if you realize that you do not have enough signals scouted or opportunities reviewed from quarter to quarter. Also, what adds to the beauty of the approach is that it provides the team with a goal, which motivates people to reach the agreed goals and meet expectations. This approach helps you because you can distribute accountability and check back with your team members regularly. Now you might ask, okay, this is a great example, but how can I translate this into my context? Are there any rules of thumb? And, indeed, I won't let you go without any general explanation on finding the right level for setting expectations. This rule of thumb is based on scientific research in psychology and our human capacity to process information. It's the rule of the magic number, 7 plus or minus 2, which means that we cannot handle a range of more than 9 elements in tasks with high cognitive load. This explains why we recommend setting the expectation for presenting opportunities to your leadership at 5 to 10 opportunities. It is simply nearly impossible to process more information with such high relevance in the normal time span given to such events. The same rule applies to the job scouts have to perform in a week. It might be hardly possible for them to describe opportunities and scout premium signals above that range. I hope that this provides you with some helpful guidance in keeping your teams accountable. In the next session, we will explore the 4th building block of the innovation governance structure that also has an impact on the definition of key results. We'll be exploring the follow-up formats and how to design the flow of transparency around such key results. So I'll leave you to enrich your responsibility chart with your accountability numbers per role. See you in the next session. Welcome back. You've reached the session of this milestone that concludes our exploration of the structural components of innovation governance. And this topic should definitely not be forgotten. It's about the follow-up formats and is as important as the other structural building blocks. In essence, it's about checking back how well your team performs against the objectives, responsibilities, and accountabilities set. Unfortunately, follow-ups don't always get the attention that they should. Sometimes there is the belief that it is sufficient to have objectives and key results in place without following up on them regularly. Since progress is constant, so should be the frequency of follow-ups to identify blockers, to share key learnings, and to make adjustments early. This will limit the risk of possible project failure. Therefore, you should carefully consider how you organize your follow-up formats. But before going into the details, let's quickly reflect on 3 reasons why follow-ups are important. First, follow-ups help you and your team to stay up to date. Second, the updates give everyone the opportunity to reflect. And third, using this reflection provides the opportunity for adjustments. It also provides an opportunity to identify synergies or, in general, to take something away from it. For the originators of ideas, this will help them to see whether they are progressing in the right direction. And consumers of ideas, this will help them understand what others are working on and what they can take away from it for their own work. This should not be surprising, right? Now follows a more interesting consideration. What are the best follow-up formats and what is the right cadence to organize these follow-ups? In general, it should be clear that every outcome you envision should have a regular follow-up. Going back to our earlier example, you should follow up weekly on the premium signals scouted. Do they have the right quality? Do you see progress in the theme of interest? If you're not able to answer these questions, it may be a good idea to reflect and adjust the theme or scouting sources. Gaining clarity on your desired outcomes is only possible when you request feedback from your team. And the same applies to the other jobs that you want to get done. In terms of the right format, these days it seems that most follow-up happens in virtual meetings. Time in meetings has more than tripled since the beginning of 2020. This can be exhausting for participants, but most of the time it's also unnecessary and inefficient because updates that are only heard are likely to be easily forgotten. A more efficient approach to follow-ups and giving feedback is in an asynchronous format. And these days, it's never been easier to craft and share updates in minutes, saving you and your colleagues valuable time. It also helps you to better prepare for the more crucial aspects of tracking progress, which is reflection and takeaways. To give you some examples, you could ask your colleagues to make quick recordings, write down their updates, or to consult automatic dashboards if you have these in place. For reflections and the collection of takeaways, the approach is a bit different. It's better to allocate some time here where everyone meets at the same time. Of course, you should not run any meeting without an agenda, but it's the better place for connecting meaningfully and building on collective experiences. In terms of cadence, it is good to follow the same rule as for the updates. In the cadence you expect updates, you should also allocate some time for these reflections in regular team meetings. And that's it for the governance structure. You have laid the foundation to effectively operate your innovation governance. In the next session, we will discuss a related topic, which focuses on how to connect with other departments. See you there. Hi there, welcome back. It's the final session of Milestone 2, which focused on structuring innovation governance. In the previous sessions, we concentrated on organizing the activities within a single innovation team. However, the reality is that bigger organizations have a broader distribution of individuals taking care of innovation activities. At best, every department has an individual or a team that takes care of further innovation development. There is a saying that corporates cannot innovate, most likely because they have become specialists in their core business. The saying goes further that real innovation must occur outside the organization. It cannot survive inside. This brings our attention to the concept of the ambidextrous organization. The ambidextrous organization is a structural concept that divides an organization into operative and an explorative parts. The explorative part prepares a company for the future. It sets the ground to explore new opportunities, ventures, partnerships, and markets. You may be correct in guessing that this is the sweet spot for radical innovation and strategy teams. These considerations show that innovation activities ought to happen at different levels and in different teams. It is distributed across the whole organization. This should remind you of the fundamental concept of this course, which is the split between autonomy and coordination. If all teams operate in isolation, they are autonomous, but this increases the chance of duplicating work. conflicting priorities, and inefficient resource utilization. This situation, in turn, requires coordination among stakeholders and clear communication of who's responsible for what. The best coordination mechanism between such teams is cooperation and connection. The first step in this direction is identifying the key responsible individuals. Once this is clear, an innovation board provides a good opportunity to coordinate their activities. The innovation board is a forum where the different responsible individuals meet and exchange. This can be a virtual forum, a digital platform, or a recurrent meeting. The important aspect is to have a clear place where coordination is happening. Through this structured coordination, exploration teams will not lose the connection to the core business, and the core business teams have direct access to future plans. Hey there, welcome back. If you're watching this video, it's because you already know why innovation governance is such an important piece in innovation management. You have already explored your current situation, and you have explored the structural building blocks of innovation governance. Now we will explore the 4 operational components that should help you to bring your structure into practice. We have briefly touched on the operational components of innovation governance in our previous sessions, but at the end of the day, bringing innovation governance to life and with impact means managing information flows correctly. For this reason, the next sessions will focus on templates and methods that you can apply to optimize your innovation process. The operational components that we'll cover include communicating the governance structure, role modeling, information and communication coordination, and formats to convince the top and the front line. So, let's get to it and start with the first topic, communicating the governance structure. Some good news is that we already explored a template for building roles and objectives and key responsibilities like OKR when we discussed structuring innovation governance. This is a good time to reflect on what we've discussed. You should define your team's core objective and how you add value to the organization. This gives you the starting point to design the roles, responsibilities, accountabilities, and follow-up formats. This is why it's worth spending the time to craft good purpose statements. A good purpose statement will help to guide your team. But it goes beyond that as well because, most of the time, innovation teams offer internal services and serve the needs of other stakeholders. Which is why the starting point of this exercise is to think about your internal customers. Who are they? How can you help them? How can you build a strong, credible relationship with them that they come to you and request your help? The benefit of good stakeholder relationships will take out the guesswork and help you to thoroughly identify their pain points as you try to steer your organization's future direction. When you achieve this, you are invincible. We explored some of the most common innovation team objectives in the second session of Milestone 2. You may want to rewatch this as a refresher. You can also craft your own value statement or statements to guide your engagement with your stakeholders. We've designed a template which you may want to use to ensure that you consider all important aspects. The template is available for download. Have a look below. Crafting a sound value statement aims to construct a framework for how best you can make an impact on other teams. Therefore, it asks you to identify your target customer and then to describe which of their pain points you aim to relieve and why. In this process, you will consider the impact on the other team and the organization in general. After identifying your purpose in working with this team, the template should help you craft your position towards them. So, how do you best approach this team? How should they perceive you? And, more importantly, what will be the investment from your team? Is it worth it? If you craft several such value statements, it should be possible for you to find your sweet spot and how to make your team valuable and invincible. Of course, it is not just enough to know what you are able to do and to offer. You also need to make other teams aware of your offering and how your team can add value. That means that you also need to work on internal marketing material that brings your message across. But let's save this idea for a later session. For now, I encourage you to immediately start crafting your value statement, which will of course need to align with translating your general objective into roles, responsibilities, accountabilities, and follow-ups. Hello, and welcome back. You may have heard the saying, you must become the change you want to see in your organization. Or what about actions speak louder than words? When it comes to leadership and managing teams of people, these sayings provide an opportunity to reflect on how you measure up. How can we expect others to work hard, push boundaries every day, be creative, customer-focused, and outcome-focused if we only talk the talk, but don't walk the walk? A good role model sets high standards of accountability for themselves and their behaviors. Before setting accountability and responsibilities for others, be sure to be the sort of person others can get behind and support. Being a good role model doesn't require too much effort. It requires practice and consistently sticking to a handful of principles. If someone in your team fails, it is your fault. Period. If it is a wrong hire, it is your fault. If they do not meet the expectations, it is your fault. If they did a bad presentation, it is your fault because you did not train them enough. Put the blame on you and find ways to support your team. Always. And if someone in your team wins, it is their win. You are a multiplier. That is the core message here. If you get 2 people into the position of leading a handful of people, that is already 12 people that you have impacted. Thus, make sure to get followers by showing appreciation and standing in front of them when criticism comes. The first principle is about appreciation. Actually, creating followers is central to becoming a good role model. You can, of course, have followers by virtue of your authority, but it may not be as impactful and long-lasting than if you earned your followership as a result of your attitude and behavior. The second principle is about a behavior that helps you to create followership. If you want your team to feel inspired to follow in your footsteps, you will need to show them the way by embodying the characteristics of a good role model, such as taking responsibility, leading with humility, and being consistent and affirming. Creating followership is also about making your expectations as clear as possible by giving your team examples. Show them what the outcome of their actions can look like, and if they have concerns, they will tell you directly. By having a clear understanding of what is required and why it will create an environment where they are able to follow more easily. Therefore, build your following by providing meaningful examples. We now have 2 out of 5 principles: appreciation and exemplifying. The next principle is to provide a higher meaning to what you as a team want to achieve. People like to be inspired, to feel like they are part of a movement or a community. People are likely to start following when they feel motivated by a connection between the team's interest and their own interests. The more you can create a resonance between team and personal interests, the easier it will be to create followership. So, craft a joint mission that motivates everyone and adds a sense of meaning to their daily activities. Here, again, we see the connection to and importance of the objective. This glues everything together. What also connects people to your character and leadership style is when they know that you genuinely care not just regarding work-related matters, but more around general trust. It is about the ability of your team to trust you as a person and to know that you will support and defend them even outside of work circumstances. This is really about being supportive, attentive, and getting the small things right. If you want to create and sustain followers, you need to care about them. And last but not least, you need to set the standard of what you expect from your team. Culture is ultimately what you allow, and being a good role model includes setting a standard that your team will uphold. If you are always prepared for meetings, others will be prepared as well. This is about setting standards and practicing what you preach. At best, others admire how you work, how you are getting things done, and are then inspired to become as passionate as you are. But you, of course, need to show this behavior. Do not isolate or hide, but be present and share your failures, share your practices, and do so every second. These 5 principles, appreciation, exemplifying, providing a mission, caring, and leading by example, will help you to create followers. And if you have followers, you can be assured that they will try to get followers as well. And then you have multiplied your impact, and more importantly, you can be sure that there will be a constant striving to achieve your overall objective. Welcome back. Let's kick off this session with a quick reflection. Our first session in this milestone highlighted that bringing innovation governance to life with impact means correctly managing the flow of information by guiding your team and stakeholders against a common purpose, goals, and related roles. With that in mind, the focus of this session will explore how setting the right communication channels and formats can help you achieve the core purpose of communication, which is about making information explicit and creating transparency among a group of people. Therefore, communication routines are critical in creating the necessary transparency consistently and with purpose. The benefit of establishing regular communication formats is that your colleagues will adapt to the frequency and integrate it into their routines. Therefore, the 3 key traits of effective communication routines are: 1. Consistent and regular usage. 2. a clear framework, and 3. Channels aligned to the communication purpose. Okay, so let's start with the last point this time, communicating via the right channels. Research has shown that during the last decade, meeting fatigue has become an organizational problem. Too often, the virtual or on-site meeting format is used for any kind of communication and is often unproductive as it's not aligned to an overall communication purpose and does not consider more effective alternatives. Alternatives to meetings, particularly relating to written forms of communication, have an advantage in that they can be consumed at any time and can be recalled more easily. These characteristics make them the most effective channel of communication for updates, reports, or sharing of information. Of course, the major drawback of written communication is the lack of immediate response. By formulating clear guidelines and explaining when to use which communication channel, will help to strengthen communication overall and will help your team to better understand effective communication and the benefits of a good communication routine. To further support an effective communication routine, the implementation of a clear communication framework is essential. This framework should explain which topics should be addressed and how often. Now you might be wondering, shouldn't this follow directly from the purpose and objectives set? And you would be correct in your thinking. There should always be clear alignment between the goals you have set and the topics you discuss regularly. While the objectives, responsibilities, and accountability provide a target to your team, communication routines helps to follow up on them. Therefore, make sure that you provide and receive regular updates on how well you progress against your targets. Having clear, recurrent communication routines should already help you to keep your team on track. In the next 2 sessions, we will expand our focus and discuss how good communication routines can also help you to achieve buy-in from the top line and the front line, which is about strengthening your position inside your organization. Welcome back. In this session, we'll discuss the right means for stakeholder management. When talking about stakeholders, we focus on a very specific group of stakeholders, the top line or senior management. Addressing the top line appropriately is important because they provide the organizational context, the trust, and the budget to do what is required in the best interest of the organization. Not meeting the desired expectations could result in reduced budgets, limited access to organizational resources, and trust. They have the levers to cripple or boost the team. And, of course, you aim to get boosted. In principle, achieving buy-in from the top line follows the same 3 key traits of effective communication routines that you explored in the last session. If you recall these traits, you will easily understand that achieving buy-in depends on how effectively you communicate. Let's explore these characteristics and effective communication strategy in the context of 2 scenarios. Let's dive in by thinking about the following question. When you involve the top line, what is your purpose? What do you want from them? The first purpose may be very obvious. You need them to make a decision, such as releasing a budget, for example. So, what is the best communication strategy to receive such a decision? Of course, it will require proper preparation and communication that speaks the language of the top line. And this builds your framework. First, you need to get their attention. To do so, you need to talk about aspects that matter to them. Are they talking numbers? Are they talking growth? Are they focused on the details? Are they into lists and comparisons? Are they talking risks? You need to understand what concerns them most and find answers to such questions. Since you're likely to only have limited time, use a simple framework and communicate by 1. Understanding their interests. 2. Framing your proposal in their language. 3. Concentrating on what really matters. 4. Contextualizing your proposal compared to other alternatives. And 5. Be ready for additional questions. Perhaps there is a regular board meeting where you can present and get the necessary decision. As mentioned earlier, this purpose might be very obvious. The second purpose is to gain and keep their trust. This scenario is less concrete and requires a different communication approach, which entails keeping the top line in the loop and providing them the option to control. If they are well informed and feel that they do not need to intervene, you win their trust. In fact, you involve them without actually involving them by instilling a sense of confidence that everything is under control. So what is the right approach to achieve this? The first step to building trust is to establish a reporting routine. What's the right cadence you feel confident enough to report to the top line? This needs to be carefully considered because if you're unable to meet the commitment even just once, it will raise concerns and questions on whether everything is under control or not. The same is true if you do not report at all. Once you have defined your communication cadence, you should consistently frame the intention of the report, which should be aligned with your overall goal, reflect progress, and convince the top line that the budget is used beneficially. As the top line does not have sufficient time to dive into every detail, it makes sense to structure the report by summarizing the key points, highlighting the main achievements, contrasting it with blockers, as well as proposing options to remove the blockers. With such a routine, there will be no question about what you do because your communication is transparent and effective. Hey there! I'm happy to see you back. In this session, we continue our journey of stakeholder engagement and explore what you can do to achieve buy-in from the front line. Engaging the workforce on the front line is important because they have the expertise, they are close to the market and operations, and they will be the ones most impacted by innovation activities. As much as the top-line involvement is important in bringing in financial resources, the front line is important in bringing the cognitive and physical capabilities required to bring any idea and project to life. You may have heard that involving the front line can be challenging, which is not surprising when you consider incorporating the different interests, perspectives, and fears of numerous colleagues. It's nearly a law of nature that individuals feel losses more keenly than gains, and as a result, activities associated with innovation, change, and the unexpected wake primal instincts and the urge to preserve. This psychological trait explains a series of innovation barriers. Individuals' syndrome to reject new things that have not been developed internally corresponds with the fear to lose a status, a routine, or the job. Individuals' reluctance to bring in ideas because they fear failure will not be accepted and the associated negative connotations. Individuals' reluctance to share their opinions because they fear being criticized, or individuals' reluctance to think outside the corporate box because they fear being perceived as different. In fact, 85% of executives agreed that fear is a significant factor in limiting innovation efforts in their organizations. But the good news is that innovation activities and the resulting fear can be easily overcome through communication, specifically communication that is clear around what is expected. Communication builds culture, and culture coins individual risk attitudes. Therefore, it's always a great idea to strive to create a culture where colleagues and teams cannot lose, but only win. To this end, we have collected 5 principles that can help set the right frame. First, this might require the support from the top is positioning innovation activities as an imperative and not as an add-on in organizational bonus schemes. If fostering innovation is part of job descriptions in your organization, then colleagues and team do not need to invest additional resources, as being innovation-oriented will simply become part of their job and ultimately change the perception of innovation tremendously. Second, the fear is reduced once colleagues have context of what is expected from them. By providing focus topics and priorities, they will find it much easier to make a contribution, as there will be no guessing in the dark and, therefore, no uncertainty. Third, it is very important to encourage participation, as well as making it easy to participate while ensuring transparency and the ability for colleagues to perceive the value of their contributions. Fourth, if you invite your coworkers to participate, you need to follow up with every contribution as an acknowledgement of the time and energy invested. Being transparent and appreciative will help to eliminate the fear of having no voice or no impact at all, even if you have an opposing opinion. And fifth, share successes. By sharing successes, you can build a bandwagon of success that everyone wants to join. Once you get it rolling, it will be difficult to slow it down. While achieving buy-in from the front line can be challenging, it's a worthy achievement that needs to be maintained to ensure consistency. Therefore, it's imperative to commit to a communication routine that keeps all stakeholders informed and included. Hey there, welcome back. If you are watching this video, it's because you know why governance matters. You know the structural building blocks. You know how to feed these blocks through operational activities, and you want to start building your own innovation governance structure. This aspiration brings us to the question of what's the best place to start, because, as you can imagine, you cannot build an innovation governance structure overnight, but of course you want to see progress. So let's navigate to where we started. As you've learned, it is important to define your team's objectives, split them into responsibilities, and specify those with accountabilities. Regular follow-ups will help you to keep the team moving. This also means that you should start building your innovation governance with the objectives. However, it's often a luxury to have defined objectives from the outset, as expectations set by your top management can be vague at times, and you might be confronted with resistance from your team. While the top management may expect you to transform the company into a truly innovative company, the frontline will be busy managing daily obligations. These competing priorities will likely cause conflict between you and your team. So where do you start if the ambition is vague and no buy-in exists yet? You may be surprised, but to justify yourself and your innovation objectives, you should start by becoming a helpful hand to the frontline. The long-term reason is that you will need them later for any new implementations. The short-term reason is that you will justify the existence of your team more easily with some short-term wins. And, in innovation, short-term wins can be only accomplished by improving current operations. The beauty is that these improvements will also excite top management. That's why it's critical to start building a good network within your organization within the first few months. Go to your business units, ask questions, and listen carefully to extract their pain points. Are they struggling with managing partnerships? Are they struggling to keep track of their operations? Are they missing opportunities to submit ideas for improvement? Do they feel disconnected from other parts of the organization? Start your journey with small steps and quick wins. Talk with the heads of your business units and create protocols from the feedback they give you. Go through these protocols afterward and extract recurring patterns. You can then use these patterns to split the first responsibilities and accountabilities among your team. By resolving their pain points, you will serve a specific purpose and make your impact tangible. This will buy you trust and support. On the back of this trust and support you have garnered, you will gain permission to set new higher-level objectives. A typical phenomenon as a next objective is the disconnected, unstandardized innovation processes in the business units of large organizations. You should aim for standardization and synchronization of such activities. Why do we recommend this? Because it will help you to connect so far unconnected business units with similar interests and ideas. You want to become the nexus of your company's innovation activities, which is why you first need clarity on what is already happening. Which innovation projects are run in all the areas of your organization? By creating clarity, it will also help you identify synergies and discover slack or double work. Reducing organizational slack will further help you gain the trust of your senior leadership. With such early successes, you will be in the best position to follow your own agenda. As an innovation team, you don't want to solely solve operational flaws. You want to coin your corporate strategy. You want to shape the future roadmap, and you want to recommend which opportunities to pursue. With the knowledge of ongoing initiatives, you should start exploring the white spots and growth areas. Both the front line and the top line will trust that you have a solid understanding of ongoing operations, which will help you recommend new opportunities by observing market developments, and ultimately help you make a connection between today's business and what is needed in the future. If you can convincingly sell your suggestions to the top and front line, then you will be the best candidate for owning the complete innovation pipeline in decision-making. This is the state where you and your team become fully responsible with the objective to grow the company outside the core by the % required, and you will become fully responsible for deciding which execution engine will be best to achieve the innovation goals of your company. You can become the nexus for the future of your business. It can be an exciting journey, but you will need to do your homework first. By starting small, you can justify your impact on today's business. And if you can achieve this, you will gain the trust of both the front line and top line, which puts you in a position to shape the future of the business. Hey there, welcome back. In the last session, we focused on building your first innovation governance structure, which you would typically do when you step into a new position or enter a greenfield environment. In this session, we will focus on how you can improve an existing governance structure. When tasked with improving an existing governance structure, it may not surprise you that starting with an assessment of your innovation governance is a logical first step. Improving or changing something requires an understanding of the current situation. For this purpose, we compiled some questions to help recognize what is working well and what could improve or change. This series of questions relate to the governance framework you've been learning about in this course. It starts with assessing your team's objectives and how closely they are aligned with your organization's KPI. Do your objectives have a concrete contribution to your organization's goals? Are you responsible for creating earnings or savings? The closer your objectives match these KPI, the easier it will be to justify the need for your team's contribution. The next 3 questions focus on the alignment of your team to achieving the general objectives. Is there a clear split of responsibilities? Is accountability obviously measured, and is progress reported constantly? Answering these questions will help you detect any flaws in the team setup. This will give you insight into which areas of governance to focus on and optimize. In addition to answering these questions, you should question your relation to the wider organization. Do you have the right communication strategy in place to get the buy-in from the top and frontline? Do they know the impact you're driving? Is there an easy way to connect them with what you aim to achieve? Answering these questions will help you to detect any flaws in the recognition and trust your team receives inside the organization. Setting and communicating clear expectations and results will be the levers to win supporters and contributors. And last but not least, you should reflect. If you score well on all the other factors, how well do you score in meeting your objectives? If you also score well here, perhaps your objectives are not ambitious enough. Perhaps you can do more to achieve an even greater impact. Either way, conducting an assessment is an effective way to ensure that your objectives and activities are aligned to achieve the best possible outcome for your organization. Hey there, and welcome back. You've reached the final session in this milestone on strengthening innovation governance, which also concludes this course on innovation governance. Imagine a situation where you've already made an impact on your organization and demonstrated how you add value. And perhaps now it's time to take even more responsibility. In this session, we focus on adding to your innovation governance structure. During the last sessions, it will have become clear that the building blocks of an innovation governance structure resemble each other. They are interdependent. And now that you've gained the trust of the top line and the front line in your organization, and you've been tasked with more responsibility, as a result, you will inevitably need to update your governance structure. Typically, the objectives of your team and responsibilities will change. Let's reflect on how your objectives can change by reviewing the common objectives of innovation teams discussed in Milestone 2. Perhaps you were initially tasked with the foresight as an objective, and now asset management has been added as a new objective for you and your team. This change will require an update of your governance structure and an evaluation of the associated responsibilities, accountability, and follow-up formats. Since you have exercised this extensively, this should not be a big problem for you. In addition to adapting your governance structure to incorporate your new objective, you will also need to communicate the new objective to the organization. To do this effectively, conduct an analysis to determine whether there has been or currently is any other team that is working in the same direction. If there is, then join forces and work together. If not, and you start building a completely new capability, make sure that the new capability brings value to the organization. Besides changing objectives, adding a new part to your governance structure can mean building a bigger team. You may be asked to scale your initiatives globally or locally. Similarly, in this situation, you need to make sure to close the cycle. Make sure that each global or local team has a concrete objective, split responsibilities, and clear targets. All aspects of your governance structure needs to be connected and reinforce each other. Particularly, in such situations, coordination becomes more and more important. For example, bigger teams and bigger time differences make the importance of utilizing digital tools critical. Ensure that each individual in your team understands their purpose and has a clear area of responsibility. Being transparent about individual outcomes will help to ensure scalable outcomes with each new project or objectives. I hope you enjoyed this course on innovation governance. Remember to take a look at our other courses as you evolve on your innovation journey. Until then, keep innovating.